The Life and Death of the Mayor of Casterbridge by Thomas Hardy.
Casterbridge was the complement of the rural life around, not its urban opposite. Hearing voices, one of which was close at hand, she withdrew her head and glanced from behind the window curtains. Mr. Henchard, now habited no longer as a great personage, but as a thriving man of business, was pausing on his way up the middle of the street, and the Scotchman was looking from the window adjoining her own. Donald Farfrae opening the window further. "And you are off soon, I suppose," said Henchard upwards. "Yes, almost this moment, sir," said the other. "Maybe I'll walk on till the coach makes up on me." In a few minutes the latter emerged, bag in hand. Henchard looked at the bag as at an enemy. It showed there was no mistake about the young man's departure. "Ah, my lad," he said, "you should have been a wise man, and have stayed with me." They had by this time passed on from the precincts of the inn, and Elizabeth Jane heard no more. She saw that they continued in conversation, Henchard turning to the other occasionally, and emphasizing some remark with a gesture. "He was a good man, and he's gone," she said to herself. "I was nothing to him, and there was no reason why he should have wished me good-bye." When the Scotchman came out at the door, he had by accident glanced up at her, and then he had looked away again without nodding, or smiling, or saying a word. "You are still thinking, mother," she said when she turned inwards. "Yes, I am thinking of Mr. Henchard's sudden liking for that young man. He was always so. Now surely, if he takes so warmly to people who are not related to him at all, may he not take as warmly to his own kin?" Henchard, corn factor and hay merchant. The spectacle renewed his wife's conviction that for her daughter's sake she should strain a point to rejoin him. The discussion was continued during breakfast, and the end of it was that Mrs. Henchard decided, for good or for ill, to send Elizabeth Jane with a message to Henchard, to the effect that his relative Susan, a sailor's widow, was in the town. He had been described as a lonely widower, and he had expressed shame for a past transaction of his life. There was promise in both. If he thinks it does not become the good position he has reached to in the town, to let us call on him as his distant kinsfolk, say, then, sir, we would rather not intrude. We will leave Casterbridge as quietly as we have come, and go back to our own country. And if he say yes, inquired the more sanguine one. In that case, answered Mrs. Henchard cautiously, ask him to write me a note, saying when and how he will see you or me. Elizabeth Jane went a few steps towards the landing. "And tell him," continued her mother, "that I fully know I have no claim upon him, that I am glad to find he is thriving, that I hope his life may be long and happy. There, go." Thus, with a half-hearted willingness, a smothered reluctance, did the poor forgiving woman start her unconscious daughter on this errand. It was about 10 o'clock, and market day, when Elizabeth paced up the high street, in no great hurry, for to herself her position was only that of a poor relation deputed to hunt up a rich one. Thus Casterbridge was in most respects but the pole, focus, or nerve knot of the surrounding country life, differing from the many manufacturing towns, which are as foreign bodies set down, like boulders on a plain, in a green world with which they have nothing in common. Casterbridge lived by agriculture at one remove further from the fountainhead than the adjoining villages, no more. The townsfolk understood every fluctuation in the rustic's condition, for it affected their receipts as much as the laborers. They entered into the troubles and joys which moved the aristocratic families 10 miles round. She was conducted into the mossy garden, and through a door in the wall, which was studded with rusty nails speaking of generations of fruit trees that had been trained there. She wandered about this place, uncomfortably conscious of the impending interview, till she was quite weary of searching. She ventured to inquire of a boy in what quarter Mr. Henchard could be found. Elizabeth turned the handle, and there stood before her, bending over some sample bags on a table, not the corn merchant but the young Scotchman, Mr. Farfrae, in the act of pouring some grains of wheat from one hand to the other. His hat hung on a peg behind him, and the roses of his carpet bag glowed from the corner of the room. Having toned her feelings and arranged words on her lips for Mr. Henchard, and for him alone, she was for the moment confounded. "Yes, what is it?" said the Scotchman, like a man who permanently ruled there. She said she wanted to see Mr. Henchard. "Ah, yes. Will you wait a minute? He's engaged just now." When the two new acquaintances had passed out of sight that morning towards the Bath and Bristol road, they went on silently, except for a few common places, till they had gone down an avenue on the town walls called the Chalk Walk, leading to an angle where the north and west escarpments met. "Now I am not the man to let a cause be lost for want of a word. And before ye are gone for ever I'll speak. Once more, will ye stay? There it is, flat and plain. You can see that it isn't all selfishness that makes me press, for my business is not quite so scientific as to require an intellect entirely out of the common. Others would do for the place without doubt. Some selfishness perhaps there is, but there is more. It isn't for me to repeat what. Come, bide with me, and name your own terms. I'll agree to 'em willingly and, without a word of gainsaying. For, hang it, Farfrae, I like thee well. Providence. Should anyone go against it? No, I'll not go to America. I'll stay and be your man." His hand, which had lain lifeless in Henchard's, returned the latter's grasp. "Done," said Henchard. "Done," said Donald Farfrae. The face of Mr. Henchard beamed forth a satisfaction that was almost fierce in its strength. "Now you are my friend," he exclaimed. "Come back to my house. Let's clinch it at once by clear terms, so as to be comfortable in our minds." Farfrae caught up his bag and retraced the Northwest Avenue in Henchard's company as he had come. Henchard was all confidence now. He then took Farfrae round, and showed him the place, and the stores of grain, and other stock, and finally entered the offices where the younger of them has already been discovered by Elizabeth.